So today we're going to talk about imaginary numbers, and more specifically we're going to start with the imaginary unit, which is I. I is equal to the square root of -1. And then as we figure out our solutions, we have to remember that imaginary numbers repeat in a pattern of 4. So we'll figure out what the answer to I to the 0 is. We'll evaluate I to the first, evaluate I to the second, evaluate I to the third. If we're doing things correctly because of our pattern of 4, I to the fourth should be the same thing as I to the 0 because the pattern then starts over. Then I to the fifth should be the same thing as I to the first because, again, the pattern starts over. So let's evaluate these numbers. So I have I to the 0 power. I to the 0 power is equal to 1 because anything to the 0 power is equal to 1. And then I to the first is itself, so it's just equal to I. So the first two numbers in my pattern are 1 and I. Then I go to I squared. I squared is equal to the square root of -1 times the square root of -1. Root -1 times root -1 is -1 because the square root of anything times itself is that number. So root -1 times root -1 is just the number underneath the radical, which is -1. Then if I have I cubed, I have 3 square roots of -1. I pair them up because I knew root -1 times root -1 is -1. And this one doesn't have a pair. And then I'm just going to simplify that expression. I know the square root of -1 is equal to I. So I have -1 times I, which gives me -I. So the fourth number in my pattern is -I. So as I figure out my complex numbers, they should all fall within that pattern of 4. Now if I go to I to the fourth, we said I to the fourth should be the same thing as I to the 0 power. So I know with I to the fourth I have 4 root -1s. So if I pair them up, I get -1 times -1. -1 times -1 is +1, which was the same value as I to the 0. So we're starting over with our pattern. So I to the fifth would fall in line here. So we have I to the fifth. Not I to the fifth, it's I to the fourth. Okay, so and we go to I to the fifth next, and I have 5 of them. Okay, we pair them up. I have -1, -1, and then we have the square root of -1 left over. -1 times -1 is +1, with the square root of -1 left over. 1 times I, which is I, and we said I to the first is equal to I, and I to the fifth should be the same value, and it is. So come over here to our chart. So I to the fifth is also equal to I. And then if I said I to the sixth, we should know I to the sixth is -1, and I to the seventh is equal to -I. So take the next couple minutes and check your understanding.